So I saw this post on Rehab Science, nice page on Instagram, and he was just talking about going through the thorax, a thoracic mobilization, just a neat way of doing it. And I wanted to go over some of the applied anatomy of it. Not that he needs my help by any means, but it was just a cool way of doing things, and I thought I'd like to add my 2 cents on it. So what we've got is the upper body moving the lower body. So it's like he's taken this whole big thing up here and he's concentrating it into that hand or using it to move that hand. And so when he gets an up and down motion here, he's lifting those arms up and down, he's actually getting a mirrored or similar up and down motion at the spine, at this area of the thorax, and he's using the connections of the body. And this turns out it's actually quite powerful. It can be very strong because we're using a big part of the body to move a small part. But we do have to be careful with it, of course, because it's a lot of power, has potential for damage, so we should probably go slow and careful. Not that I'm suggesting you do this, of course. Anyways, there's a hand placement. This hand is gently, reasonably pushing in and creating a bit of a fixed point. And so that means it's going to prevent movement from going in that area, but it's going to concentrate movement in and above that region. So just above. And it's important you have a good handhold. And he's explaining that he's got it just on either side of the spinous process. So this spinous process is on the back side of the vertebrae. It kind of sticks out. It's that bony bit, that pointy bit, spinous process. And so he's got his holding point on either side of that spinous process. And it's actually a pretty good point to hold. It gives you something to actually hold on. And this is what's actually going to focus that movement. That's kind of what we need. So it means that because of this handhold, this grip, if you will, he's able to take something that starts out, let's say we start out in low arm position. It should create a flexed position. So rounded down, rounded forward, flexed position, kyphosis, you can call it too. Or comparatively, as he lifts up, as he brings those arms upward, we get instead an extended position. And notice he uses the word gently. Very important too, gently pushing the spine into extension. So it's both things happening simultaneously. These 2 points work together, and this is really important. And they connect as well. The whole thing connects the whole way through. A really simple way of explaining it would be just to go, okay, we've got, the humerus, the arm, and that attaches to the scapula to thorax. And that's easy, but it's actually not technically true. Remember that we've got a floating scapula. We've got a scapula, this bony thing right here. We've got a scapula that is floating on the thorax. It doesn't have the same type of connections. So, for instance, we could mention the triceps that'll get us connected from humerus to scapula. We could mention the biceps too. Don't want to clutter this though. There's the pec major minor that'll get us from scapula to the rib cage. And then, of course, we could mention serratus anterior, which would be right about there, also to the rib cage. We could mention the trapezius muscle. We could mention also the rhomboid muscle, too. Again, attaching to the vertebrae from that scapula. And so these are important connections. And so that's how we get our leverage. That's how we actually use our arms. It's important to know that because if the leverage doesn't work, you could look at those other things to explain why it doesn't work. And this is important too. We actually have really good control over rib to vertebra attachment. We have really good control over the vertebra through that rib cage because remember the rib cage, you probably know this, but the ribs actually attach to usually 2 vertebrae, not always, but usually 2 vertebrae, and actually attach in between the vertebrae right to the discs. That's a point of high mobility for sure. So when this is done, when this is well done, as we bring those arms up and we have a solid, partial fixation or encouragement of motion here, a concentration of those forces, we get a great extension. And so if we have an area, let's say we've got something in here, we'll say this spot here doesn't move so well, and we create that fixed point there, and we bring those arms up and we start lifting those vertebrae into an extension, we can make sure that the area of low mobility that maybe needs a bit more encouragement for movement gets what it needs. It gets that further encouragement. So we can certainly do it generally, but because of the way this is done, we can focus on points that need it just a bit more than the others. Because you may find that someone has poor mobility overall, but there are certain points that are the worst, and it's good to know how to do that. Anyways, that's what I think.